Welcome to Public Health Matters, where we talk about what matters in public health. I'm Jane Goodman, Public Health Network Strategist with the Division of Public Health and Community Services. And before I welcome our guest today, I'd like to give you a public health update. COVID levels right now are looking much better in the United States. As you can see from our 2-week difference in the maps, we have a lot of green out west and still some yellow and red areas in the east, especially in the south. The state of Florida is not looking too great right now. And taking a closer look at the state of New Hampshire and Hillsborough County, we are at green, so we are low, and that is great news. The county right next to us is at yellow, so hopefully by next week that will come down. But you can see to our south, Massachusetts, the majority of the state is in a medium transmission level. So, take precautions. We're not out of the woods, folks. So use your judgment. If you're in a crowded indoor space where you don't know a lot of people, the windows are closed, wear that mask. Also, I want to remind people that there are treatments available for COVID-19. So if you test positive for COVID, you can get Paxlovid if you're 12 and up. And if you're having trouble seeing your primary care provider, you can call 1-800-818-5803. And on-site medical services will do an intake and get you your Paxlovid mailed to you. So this is a really important service so that people are not getting sicker with COVID. And a reminder, if you do get to that point, we do have COVID-19 antigen tests available. They are at our office right now. So if you are interested in picking up some tests, 603-589-4500. You can even ask for me if you need to, since I'm making this announcement. But these tests are free. And we do encourage people, if they have signs and symptoms of COVID, to do a test and to do that isolation and quarantine to make sure that we're not spreading it more in our community, especially to our most vulnerable. Just a reminder, children ages 6 months and up are now eligible for an updated bivalent COVID-19 vaccine. Children should get the updated vaccine as a booster at least 2 months after their second shot of Pfizer or Moderna. And for children aged 6 months to 4 years old who get the Pfizer vaccine, the third shot of that series is actually going to be that updated bivalent booster. So finish the series. So again, the bivalent booster is available. It protects against Omicron and the original strain of COVID-19. And the Department of Health and Human Services recommends vaccination 3 months after infection or 3 months after your last vaccination. Our uptake on booster shots is very low in the country. I was looking at that today. It's only 15%. So let's see if Nashua can do its part and go and get those boosters. It really is protective. There's more and more research coming out every day that people are much more protected against severe illness and hospitalization with that booster. And speaking of shots, don't forget your flu shot. It's not too late to vaccinate. That yearly vaccination is a very important step to protect you against flu. And there's a lot of that going on right now. So with no further ado, I am very pleased to welcome Emily Martuscello from the Office of Emergency Management from the City of Nashua. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Jane, and I appreciate your update because I'm going to Florida next week, so I clearly need to wear my mask while I'm there.
Yes, so, Florida is yellow, like Florida almost the whole state.
Okay, well then, so they're having a little too much fun down there, not wearing their masks, so I will make sure to do that while I'm down there,
and I
enjoying
always
my
recommend
vacation.
That even though it's optional, I do recommend people wear their masks on the airplane.
Yes.
It's just safer, and a lot of COVID is spreading and other things spread. So it's almost like a security blanket.
Pretty much, yeah. We're in a tin can flying down there, so I will be wearing one.
So,
but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so you're from the Office of Emergency Management and through the city.
Yes.
And you were here before. So first of all, welcome to the show. But welcome back to Nashua.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be back. So yeah, I came back as the Director of Emergency Management, and we're a small office. There's only 2 of us, so I'm the Director, and we have an Emergency Management Coordinator. But I was previously working in the city almost 10 years ago, actually, under the former Director of Emergency Management, Justin Cates, who's a good friend of mine. And I got to work with a lot of people in the city, with the Public Health Department, with Nashua TV actually a lot. So it's exciting to be back, and it's really great to be working at the local level. It's just, it's a lot of fun, get to interact with all the community members and all of the awesome city departments that we have here.
Great. And so tell me where you went, because that makes you very qualified to come back as the director.
Yeah, so before my return back here to Nashua, when I was working here in the city, I did a little bit of your job. Actually, I was the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Stratford County for a short period of time.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. I got to do public health, which is funny because it made me uniquely qualified for a funny thing that I'll tell in a minute. I went to the state Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So I worked for the state of New Hampshire, and I did all kinds of things there, training, exercises. But for the past 7 years, I was with the federal government. I was with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I was down in Boston. So again, I'm really great to return, but I did, I led a lot of different events and disasters for FEMA, and one of them was our COVID-19 response here in New England, and I helped lead our first federal vaccination clinics in Rhode Island, and somehow my, less than a year as a public health emergency preparedness coordinator running one hep outbreak clinic made me the most qualified person. So I was like, well, I'm giving out hundreds of thousands of shots is a little different than like less than 100 at a hepatitis outbreak, but
Hey, but it prepares you.
it prepared me, and I was like, well, we're going to have to scale our knowledge, but that's the unique thing about emergency management is we work all hazards. So we get to work with partners in public health when there's public health emergencies, but usually we're handling natural disasters. Like floods and hurricanes, and our favorite right now, winter storms.
Yes, it is our favorite right now.
Oh, right now it happens to be, yeah. So we've had a few of those here, but the staff in the city are, really prepared, and that's kind of one of the things that emergency management does, coordinate with the other city departments for things like snow emergencies. So the Department of Public Works, has a lot to do during a snow emergency, and then, we can help with additional resources or coordinating across the different city departments, when there's a big snowstorm.
So the snowstorms are top of mind right now.
Yes.
Because we've just come out of a few, and probably we'll have a few more. Well, maybe I don't want any
yeah,
more.
well-
Maybe we won't. And you said you were up at the state, so that's Homeland Security and Emergency Management,
Yes.
which we love acronyms in public health. HSEM.
Yeah, HESM sometimes they
HESM.
say.
Oh, I'd
or-
never heard that.
Yeah,
Okay.
So.
So what's the difference between the state and the FEMA? Like, where do the lines cross?
Okay, so in the structure of emergency management, we have the locals, we have the state, and then we have the federal government. But the thing in emergency management, as a profession, we say all emergencies are local, which is true. Every emergency plays out at the local level. Even if you look at something as huge and terrible as, Katrina, it's all happening at the local level. So each level has something to play. So at the local level, we have the first responders. We're doing things like helping with rescues, not me personally, the fire department's doing this, rescuing people, or the police department, Public Works is clearing streets. In emergency management, we're running what's called the Emergency Operations Center. We're trying to coordinate that. Now, when an emergency gets outside the scale of just a local level, that's when we can go to the state for additional resources. And that's mainly what my office will do, is coordinate bringing in additional resources to the city, whether it be staff, usually it's like equipment, personnel, that kind of stuff. We will make what are called resource requests to the state for additional resources. Now, if it's so big that then the state needs help, when I worked at FEMA, that's what FEMA would do. The state would go, hey, we want to have what's called a presidential disaster declaration, and that will bring in federal resources, usually money. But that's really important during a disaster because disasters are very expensive. So that's how the levels work. We try to do what we can within our jurisdiction with the resources that we have, and we're very fortunate in Nashua. We are, very prepared, and we have a lot of resources, but we can call on mutual aid. But then when it gets to the point where we need additional resources, we can go to the state, and then when the state's tapped out, they go to the feds.
Okay, so that just kind of puts it in perspective.
Yeah, so I've gotten to do it at all levels. But
you know who to ask for help, so that's important.
Yes, and I know how to ask, which is important because this is government. So sometimes is a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of forms, and I filled out every single one. So, in an emergency, or even when we're talking about non-emergencies. So obviously there's not an emergency every day, which I am very grateful for. So a lot of what my office does is preparedness and mitigation. So we work with the other city departments on, mitigating disasters, which means, making sure our infrastructure, like our dams, our levees, other things are working, putting in other mitigation mitigation efforts to, prevent things like floods, which, fun fact, that's the most common hazard in the world, and it is flooding, because the flooding happens everywhere, and here in Nashua as well. So that we do that, and then we do a lot of preparedness, and with that comes a lot of planning. So we try to plan again for all hazards, all types of disasters, so that when we do need to respond, we have a plan in place to do that.
Yeah, that all hazards, kind of looking at everything, and I know there's some work now going on, at least in public health, with that kind of all hazards assessment, like what are they? And sometimes I think we plan and plan and plan, and then we never use it. But that's why I always feel like it's an insurance policy.
It is, and one of the things, like, if so, the public in Nashua can think, we think about what are our normal hazards that we have, and I know we talked about this, is we have winter storms, we have floods, and increasingly we're seeing like heat waves, things happening in the summer, big thunderstorms or straight line winds that kind of seem like a tornado, but they're just crazy winds.
Or the microburst.
Microbursts, as they call them.
We had one near me.
Yeah, so we can look around us and just say, from our past experience, we know what are the most common hazards that we would expect. And if you're an individual, or if you're in my office, we're taking in all of those, and you're kind of doing what's called a threat assessment. What are those different things? And preparing for them is usually pretty similar, actually. We might, instead of responding, with a snowplow, we might respond with a dump truck in a flood, but still, we need to respond with something. So if you're at home and you're thinking, okay, let's just as a family think through, how are we going to plan for an emergency? Think about those different experiences you've had in the city or in your lifetime, and say, what are those things that I want to have in place in my home, or where are all of us most of the time at work? So don't forget to have something at work. And just
that's a good point.
It's a really good point, because a lot of us live at work. So and like our kids are at school, so we work with the schools to make sure they have great plans. I'm very proud of our school. They're so prepared for emergencies. But individually, we all need to take on the role of being prepared, because I personally cannot take care of everyone. So it's really important for everyone to make a plan. What are they going to do in an emergency? But most importantly, how do you know if there's an emergency? And that's the part that I wanted to especially say on the show, is that it's really important to know if there's an emergency happening, and how are you going to know, especially in the middle of the night. So my recommendation, I have a couple recommendations for everyone. First of all, if you have a smartphone, you should go in your settings and enable the emergency alerts. So if there's a really bad emergency, we can just push that through to people's phones, and we will. But you can go to, pardon me, you can go to New Hampshire Alerts.gov, and we're going to share some of those resources after. And you can sign up.
During. We have the magic.
It'll be just going as we're doing this. Great. So you can go and sign up for emergency alerts. And this is really important, because in New Hampshire, you have to opt in. So I don't get everybody's personal cell phone numbers. So you all have to opt in to get emergency alerts. And we have the ability to send those out in Nashua. But the other thing I really recommend is, if you can get a weather alert radio, a NOAA weather alert radio, that's really important, because that's always on in your home, and therefore in the middle of the night, say you have your phone on silent or something like that, and we get a tornado warning, it will wake you up, and you will be able to get into a safe room in your house. And I think that's really important for people to understand. How are they going to know there's an emergency? That way, then you can actually use your plan.
Right.
But if the emergency passes by you and you luck out and you didn't get to use your plan, that's a key part, is having a plan, but more importantly, knowing how to be alerted of an emergency.
So there's that code red.
Yes.
And then, so I get alerts. I don't even know how I get them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I turn them on or not.
Well, I think I might have added
weather.
everybody in the city. So the city might just get the alerts either
Maybe
way.
it's your fault.
Yeah.
But I do get some weather alerts occasionally.
Yep.
But I guess my question, I'm trying to phrase this the right way. You want to be prepared. You want to know how to get alerted for this. Not everyone has a smartphone, unfortunately. Oh, you mentioned a NOAA weather
radio. Yeah.
So what does NOAA stand for?
It's the National Weather Service, basically, and so it's okay if you don't have a smartphone. Code Red will still work. We do have people's home phone numbers because those are in the telephone book. So if you have a home phone number, it's probably been registered with Code Red. You can also add an email address. So if you want to get emails, we can send you emails as well. So you don't have to have a smartphone to sign up, although there is an app. So if you want to download the app, you can as well. But having a radio, a weather alert radio, is what I would highly recommend getting one of those. And again, it's something that's just always there as your kind of backup. Like, it's going to tell you if there is some sort of weather emergency that you need to take a protective action, like again, like a tornado, which can happen, or a severe thunderstorm, something like that, where you're like, okay, everybody come back inside now. Lightning safety is really a big deal, and we don't want any of those accidents to happen. So yeah, just having multiple ways to be alerted and knowing that, how are you going to be alerted at work? How are you going to be alerted when you're, it's the middle of the night and you're sleeping?
Yeah, I wouldn't hear a thing.
Yeah,
that's
you would hear this on radio.
I do not keep my phone in the bedroom.
Yeah,
which is a public health tip.
Yeah, well, and
to not have that by your side and not go to sleep with it. But other than that,
yeah, I happen to have mine with me because that's always
that's
when
your job.
There's a fire is always at 1 o'clock in the morning. But that's what I know. So it happens. But yeah, having the weather alert radio somewhere where you would be able to hear it is important.
So you just mentioned something. A fire happens at 1 in the morning. What is your role?
Yeah. So, well, mainly, again, emergency management is not first responder. We have emergency services in the city with our fire department, police department, AMR, and even Public Works is out there responding to trees down and other things like that. So my role as the emergency management director in our office is, to coordinate those resources when we have something that's of a larger scale, like a big apartment fire. Usually I'll get called out to, and what we're trying to do is work with the other city departments to provide resources to people who are displaced. And we have procedures to do that, and that usually involves bringing in the Red Cross, who provides a lot of resources, but also in public health, our welfare department is a great resource in being able to help people after they're displaced out of their home for a fire, or as we've been seeing in Massachusetts, I really don't hope it happens here, but huge water main breaks that have been flooding whole neighborhoods. And so, again, all hazards. We want to be prepared for everything. So typically it's a fire, and we'll go out and just make sure all the resources that the city has is available to people who are displaced, and coordinate with the fire department, the police department in public health and welfare, and then the Red Cross is a key partner.
For shelter, right?
Yeah, for sheltering, and after a fire, they're able to provide people with resources. And I think this is just another plug I want to make for everyone is, when we talk about having a plan for a disaster, disasters happen. Home fires happen, floods happen. What are you able to do to help mitigate that? And obviously, smoke detectors are really important. They save lives. The last 2 fires that we had in the city, people's lives were saved because of smoke detectors.
Okay.
One of the buildings was saved because of a smoke detector. So that's really important. But the other thing, if you're able to afford it, insurance. So things are going to get lost. Things are going to get damaged.
Sure.
Have insurance. It's so important. And, usually homeowners do have insurance, but a lot of our renters, aren't able to or forget to get renter's insurance. And so it's something I always like to talk to people about after a fire is, if you have a car, just add on some renter's insurance, because it really makes a difference when you've lost everything, that you have that. And it's a mitigation measure. Disasters happen, and you want to be covered so that you're able to basically recover from that disaster.
Yeah, because if you don't have insurance and all your stuff is gone, how are you going to replace it?
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
And people mistakenly think that their landlord's insurance will cover it, and it will not. So I always like to educate people that obviously to mitigate disaster, we want to have smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, I know they beep and they're annoying. Do not take them down. Do not take them down. Put a new battery in. And then look at those other things you can do, like, you know, having fire extinguishers, but also getting good in renters or homeowners insurance that will, you know, make your family whole again after a disaster.
Yeah, and you mentioned too, like, not only having a plan, but like a plan like for your family. So if you have young kids or if you have pets,
Yes.
like what are you going to do? Or are you going to meet? I always think of like a typical thing, like a house fire.
Yeah.
You know,
Where's your meeting place?
Where's your meeting place? So those are things, I mean, they're really important to talk to your kids about. So, you know, just so that they know, oh, fire, there's a lot, you know, we're going to meet at the mailbox, or we're going to meet at the neighbor's house, or whatever it is. There has to be a meeting place.
Yeah, and I think starting with a fire escape plan is a great place to start for everyone, right? Because they can kind of think, okay, let's talk through what we're going to do as a family. Some people might have different mobility needs. Some people might have different hearing needs, whatever it might be. Thinking through those things as a family. But we also really encourage people to think through, okay, what if there's some sort of disaster while we're all at work or at school? Now where's our meeting place? And we encourage people to think of a meeting place that is both within their neighborhood and outside of their neighborhood. And to also have an emergency contact outside of your area, because if there is a disaster that's localized to this area, we could see communication degrade. And you might not be able to make a call to somebody in this area, but maybe your Aunt Sue, who, you know, lives in Texas, everybody can get a hold of her and tell her where they are and they're safe and that kind of thing. So that's really important, to have an emergency contact both in state and out of state, and think about if our neighborhood is flooded, or if there's, you know, an incident and the neighborhood's closed, you know, where would we meet, and what would be our plan, and how would we communicate as a family? And that's the other thing to think about. You know, so many of us only have our phone numbers in our phones. So
some of us don't even know our phone numbers.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, that's the thing to think about is, you know, as a family, do you have a little contact card, you know, that your kids have, or you have, or maybe someone you're taking care of, that has everybody's phone numbers? Because, you know, if you lose your phone or something happens to your phone and now you don't have people's numbers to communicate with, you know, it's just those little things to think about. But I also want to say there's so many multi-generational families that are living together that when you're making a plan, it's really important to take into account all the different things that everyone needs, whether it's medication, whether it's durable medical goods like a walker, glasses. You know, I've got my contacts in right now. I always have my glasses in my truck, because if I have to go to a fire and then my contact's stuck to my eyeball. So, you know, you need to think through, you know, after working so long.
Thank you for that visual.
Sorry, they dry out, but it's just something to think about. What are all those little things?
Yeah.
Or, you know, people have a lot of food sensitivities. So you can come to an emergency shelter and we're going to do our best, but those little things make a big difference when you're planning. And then it also makes it a lot less scary, because you've thought through those little comfort things that are going to make the difference for your family in the event of an emergency.
Yeah, and we have, you know, preparedness bags at our office, which my lovely coworker does a lot with. And, you know, and he really lives it. He talks the talk and walks the walk. He's got his preparedness bag in his trunk and everything else. So, but it's simple. There's a simple checklist on it, and it's just important things to have in case of an emergency. And you were also mentioning the phone, because one day I said to okay, why does it always say ICE in front of my name?
Yeah.
But again, that's set on my husband's phone. In case of emergency, it would be me.
Yeah.
So that's a great setting you can put on your phone.
Absolutely.
So that, you know, if something does happen to you, or you go down, you know, God forbid, but, you know, if something happens, someone can look on your phone and find your emergency contact.
And making a plan doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, Public Health tweeted out today, we have a template called My Emergency Plan that was tweeted out, and you can print it and fill it out. So it's as simple as that. It's like, it's a grab and go plan where we have thought through all those different items that you need to write down, like emergency contacts, you know, special dietary needs, your meeting place, your out-of-state contact, your in-state contact, you know, where everybody is during the day, like just the addresses of where people are. You know, what if you can't just Google it? And that's always like, I tell everybody, what if you just, you know, can't Google it? What are you going to do? So that's available, and we can put that up behind us too, is we have a template plan that the city has that, you know, anybody can download and fill out for their family. So don't have to start from scratch.
All right, so we'll make sure to get that up there as well. So, Yeah, so who's tweeting from my office? I'd like to know.
Whoever tweeted that today, the Office of Emergency Management also has a Twitter. We retweeted it. So
yeah, I don't tweet, so I don't know. I don't know how to do that. So I'm like, who in my office is tweeting? So good. So this is all really great information, and I so appreciate you coming on and talking to us about the safety issues.
And thank you for having me on. And just one last thing on the Twitter. So when there's an emergency, it's really important to follow authoritative sources for the best information. So yes, there's going to be a lot of information on social media, but when something's going down, please look at the official city accounts, and we have a plan, and we work together as a city to get out the official information, whether it's a law enforcement incident, a fire incident, or public health is trying to put out information. You know, rumors fly fast, and the truth, doesn't make it far. So please, when something's happening, look to those authoritative sources for information, and be careful what you share and retweet, because you're part of the solution of getting out the right information during a disaster.
And and I've seen this all work like live, and we're preparing for a hurricane here in Nashua prior to you arriving here, and all the community departments, and you have our IT person who's going to update the website, puts a big banner across the City of Nashua website. So it really is true, and I really appreciate that, because there's a lot of false information out there, and it is important to follow the authorities around emergency management, because there really is a system to it, which people don't often realize. It's a whole nother domain. So thank you so much, Emily, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. And we're so glad you're here.
Back.
And I'm just going to wrap up with a few announcements that in a couple of weeks, we have free testing for HIV, STD, and HCV. It is our Valentine's Day testing clinic. And so we'll be holding it at our clinic at 18 Mulberry, or you can go over to the Soup Kitchen at 2 Quincy Street from 1 to 3. I want to remind people that there's a lot of anxiety and mental health issues going on out there, and courage is knowing when to ask for help. So don't forget, discuss mental health with your provider. If you're getting in for primary care, if you're getting in, don't forget to make a mention of it. Don't let it get too far. We also remind people to, when you're going to your primary care doctor, is your blood sugar over 100? It's a marker for prediabetes. We want to make sure people are staying healthy. And finally, is your blood pressure over 120/80? Again, know your number, know what your risk for hypertension is. High blood pressure is a risk for heart disease and so many other diseases that can be prevented. So please do your part. And finally, our health clinic is open on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Tuesdays from 4 to 7, where we do immunizations and lead testing. And Thursdays 3 to 6, we have our sexual wellness clinic. So thanks for all of you for tuning in. And remember that public health matters. See you next time.